What's up, people? It's Dre, and welcome to my channel. Okay guys, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time visiting my channel, welcome, and I'm glad you're here. So this topic is the question that I probably get asked the absolute most, all right? How to become a warrant officer in the United States Army. I was actually scrolling through YouTube, and I noticed that there wasn't a lot of information on this topic, and the information that was put out by a particular YouTuber was about 75% right. I love the channel, so I'm not bad-mouthing the guy, if you know who I'm talking about. But he's not a warrant officer, and he just put out the information that he knows from the outside looking in. Well, this video is intended for informational purposes only. I will refrain from trying to be funny or trying to make people laugh, because I just want you guys to get the information. And if this is something you're looking at, I want you to have all the information that you can possibly find on this topic. All right. So let's get to the first basics of this. What is a United States Army warrant officer? So what is a warrant officer? A warrant officer in the Army is a highly specialized technician in their specific career field. All right. So they're pretty much the go-to guy in a unit when it comes to specifics such as ammunition or command supply discipline or pilots or warrant officers for the most part, or it's just about anything, any MOS or any specialty that you can have in the Army. There's a warrant officer position for it. There are some outliers where there aren't, but they give those soldiers opportunities to become warrant officers if they choose to do so. So this is the person that you're going to go to if you have a specific technical question on any matters in the actual specific career field. This is the person that advises commanders on what they should do in that specific career field. So for instance, let's say a commander is having an issue with ammunition. They might have lost some ammunition, or they might be trying to figure out what type of ammunition they need. They would go to an ammunition technician warrant officer. So that warrant officer have the knowledge and the capability to tell them and advise them on what they need to do in that specific career field. So that's what a warrant officer is. And the reason that you need warrant officers is because they don't do anything else. So like my job is a property accounting technician. I know property accountability. I know what they call this command supply discipline. I know that. That is my job. I don't manage soldiers. I don't deal with the politics of the Army as much as everybody else. I don't do a lot of things that an enlisted soldier does and that a actual officer does. So that is what makes us special in our field, is that we only focus on one specific thing. So if that's something you're looking to do, then this is probably the right job for you. All right. Now let's get into the specifics of how you would become a warrant officer. So there are some age requirements when becoming a warrant officer. You got to be 18, of course, because you got to be 18 to join anyway. If you're enlisted, the age limit is 33. But there's a but. There's always a but. If you do a age waiver, depending on your background and your technical expertise, you're going to probably be selected. So I know that some information was put out that 33 was the limit, but you can do a waiver. And for instance, there was a gentleman in my class who was a communications warrant officer when I went to Warrant Officer candidate school. And this gentleman actually was 41. He had been in the Army for about 16 years, which also requires a waiver, because the actual waiver limits are 12 years in service and 33 is the age limit. So he had 16 years. He was about 41, and he did his waivers, and he was selected to be a warrant officer. So there are some instances where you can do what's called a waiver or an exception if you're a civilian, and it will allow you to become a warrant officer. With that said, the majority of warrant officers in the Army are are pilots, and a lot of them come in with limited experience, because the warrant officer the pilot school, it teaches you how to fly the helicopter. So you go to that school for 2 years and you learn how to fly the helicopter. I'm not a helicopter pilot, so I can't speak in depth on what it's like to be a helicopter pilot, but I can tell you that you can enlist as a warrant officer. You just need to talk to your recruiter and ask him how exactly in 2020 that you would enlist to do that. All right. With that said, I mentioned I mentioned to you guys the waiver forms. I mentioned to you guys the actual waiver requirements, the actual age requirements, right? So if you are already enlisted and you want to apply, the first thing you got to do is you got to go to the warrant officer website and find a packet, right? If you can't find it that way, every United States Army post has a warrant officer recruiter stationed on that post. So you'll be able to find somebody to tell you and give you information about how to join the warrant officer program. Also, there's probably a warrant officer in your unit, and they'll be more than happy to help you for the most part. We're not all jerks. It just seems that way because we're always alone. All right? And that's because there aren't that many warrant officers in the Army. So if you wanna be a warrant officer, all you gotta do, you get the packet, you fill the packet out. The packet it took me about a week to do. So your sergeant major has to sign off on it. Your S1 has to confirm your file. So your S1 is your adjutant, the people that do your processing. And they also have a warrant officer specialty. You have to get 2 letters of recommendation. One from your company commander, one from your battalion commander, and a third from an actual warrant officer, CW3 rank and above. And I'll put that rank up here in the corner so you guys can see it. You also have to be physically fit. All right. So I'm gonna tell you right now, one of the key things that a lot of people don't know is that when you go to warrant officer school, you have to maintain your fitness. They don't want you to go there on the profile because you're gonna have to run, and almost every day you're gonna run. And I'll talk about that in another video. I'm actually probably gonna make this a series. But when you go to school, you're gonna run. So before you put your packet in, make sure you're training and ensure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing physically to your body. All right? Now, there are certain instances where you're not going to be able to find a warrant officer to do your letter. So the best practice is to actually reach out to someone that knows a warrant officer in your field, or reach out to that warrant officer specifically, CW3 or above, and I put that up earlier, right? Email, you can call them, and what you'll do is you'll get an interview with that person. And this is only if you don't have a warrant officer in your chain of command that can do your packet. You get an interview with that person, you sit down, you talk to them, they'll go over your packet, and they'll ensure that you're what we want. Because the warrant officer team, they don't just accept anybody. You have to have specific requirements. You have to be experienced in what you do technically in order to go into that field. So the easiest way to do it is just to reach out to somebody and figure out if you can find somebody in your area, or if you have to drive. I was willing to drive to Carolina when I lived in Georgia to go meet with a warrant officer because I didn't have any in my field. I actually got connected through another person in my unit the first time I did my warrant officer packet, and that's another story because I did my packet twice. And the second time I actually got picked, I actually finished the packet and got selected the first time. But that is how you find somebody to do your letter if there is no one in your chain of command. And if you have any questions about that, just leave me a comment in the subscription, and I'll try to help you individually on what you and find. I probably can find you somebody to do your letter in your area. All right. Okay. The reason you probably don't see a lot of warrant officers is because it's so small. There aren't that many warrant officers in the Army, and most of the time, warrant officers are one deep in a unit. So there may only be one warrant officer for a specialty. Actually, in my unit, I'm the only actual warrant officer in my battalion. So it's easy to miss us because we're not around the fold of the actual unit. I do PT because that's what you're supposed to do. So I go to PT, not in COVID actually, but I go to PT and I work out and I do stuff with the unit. But as far as actually being on a day-to-day with the soldiers and actual officers, I don't get a chance to do that often just because my job doesn't require me to do it. So with that said, you're not going to see a whole lot of warrant officers. And that's just the bottom line. If you do join the warrant officer team, you're going to be special to that unit. And I don't mean that in a braggadocious way. You're just going to, because there are so few of you and your time is so limited, you're only going to be called upon to do specific things. All right. So the reason why you guys don't see a lot of information on the internet or a lot of information about warrant officers is because, to be honest, joining a warrant officer cohort, and it's called a collection of warrant officers, is called the cohort. So joining the warrant officer cohort is like joining a fraternity or a sorority if you're a female. It's pretty special. Like, we don't want to give you guys all of the information just because it's sacred to us, and we want to make sure that we maintain a certain level of professionalism, a certain level of class, and just a certain level of distinction as far as the rest of the Army. So that's probably why you don't see a lot of information on YouTube about this or Facebook or anything about this particular subject. So let's talk about the why. Why would you want to become a warrant officer? It's not because of the pay or because you get treated special or anything like that. Warrant officers actually, for the rest of your military career, you get to stay in your actual career field. Like I said previously, you don't do anything other than your job. So when I was enlisted, I made it all the way up to Sergeant First Class and was I was an NCO for 13 plus years of my career, right? So back then, I had to deal with soldier issues. I had a bunch of soldiers. I had to deal with a platoon. I was a sitting first sergeant for a while, and I had to deal with a whole company, right? As a warrant officer, you don't do soldier stuff. You do your job specific, and you're still a soldier. You still maintain the professionalism that a soldier has. But your job specialty is your actual job specialty. That is what you're going to do on a day-to-day basis. All right? So you're not going to have to deal with a lot of stuff that a lot of soldiers have to deal with. Not saying that it's bad, because I enjoyed my time as a non-commissioned officer. It was probably one of the most enjoyable times of my life and my career, and I would never trade it for anything in the world. But it's just different. So it's going to be a different level of professionalism that you're going to have when you're a warrant officer. So let's talk about the pay. So the pay is going to be somewhere between enlisted and officer. All right. For example, when I switched, I was a Sergeant First Class. Like I said, I had about 12 years in, almost 13, right? And when I switched and I became a Warrant Officer 1, not a CW1, a WO1. Like the other video said. But I became a WO1, and I was making maybe about $20 more as a WO1 as opposed to a Sergeant First Class. When I got promoted to CW2, that's when I actually started seeing a pay increase, and I started seeing the money was a little bit different. So I would say depending on your rank, you're going to see a significant increase. Let's say you switched over as a sergeant, you're going to see a significant pay increase as a W1. But if you switched over like I did as a Sergeant First Class, you're not going to see much of a pay increase. It's going to be minimal, but it'll be something. And then when you make CW2, that's when you start seeing your pay increase, and you'll see that you're making more money than you were. And your retirement benefits are going to probably be more significant if you would have stayed enlisted. Like I said, and nothing wrong with staying enlisted. I love my enlisted brothers and sisters. To be honest, when I came in the Army, my dream was to be the Sergeant Major of the Army, the Sergeant Major of FORSCOM, right? And it just didn't, my plans changed. So I'm never going to talk bad about the enlisted section. I love them. The NCOs are the backbone of the freaking military, and I will never talk bad about any of them because I love them to death. So with that said, the pay is just a little bit different, and it's not crazy high like what officers make, but it's a pretty good significant. I would say when you start looking at CW3 is when you're gonna start making the type of money that a O-grade officer might tend to make. That's when you start looking at seeing some big changes in your pay. All right. So my brother in the other video cleared this up in the middle of his video, but when you switch to be a warrant officer, you are actually not doing the same job you did in your military career. It's kind of different. So my job as a property accounting technician is so much different than what I did as an S4 NCOIC, right? But with that said, you learn a lot of it on the job, and some of it you're going to learn in your Warrant Officer basic course. All right, and I'll go into that in another video. But the majority of it is just you're gonna have experience in your field, and you're gonna know a lot of what you do. But your job is going to be significantly different. You're going to be processing documents. You're going to be doing a lot of different things that you trained on, but it's just a different job than what an NCO would do. All right, so let's make that clear. You're not going to do the same exact thing that you did as an NCO. It's going to be different, but it's going to revolve around the same spectrum of job responsibilities. So now, one of the things I gotta talk about towards the end of this video is discipline. So a lot of people don't understand that warrant officers have to be extremely disciplined, because when you first get to your unit, your chain of command doesn't exactly know what you do. You kind of do your own thing. You kind of make your own hours. They just don't know. So you have to be the person that tells them, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I do. This is what I bring to the table. Because they generally don't, they kind of understand. They're not stupid, but they generally just don't understand exactly what you do. So it's on you to make it clear that, hey, this is what I do. This is my job. This is what I bring to the table. I'm going to advise you on this. So that's one thing that I'll add to this video, and I'll get into some specifics in another video. As a matter of fact, like I said, I'm probably gonna make this a series now because this is good. This is a good topic to choose. All right.